Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have Chris K. Jones with me. Chris is an entrepreneur and author, and in his entrepreneurial journey, he has had to overcome many obstacles. And I think one of the things that you're going to really take away from our conversation today is how the obstacles never are a complete setback. It's just really teeing you up for the next opportunity if you take action. So, Chris, thanks so much for hopping on today and being with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to our fun conversation today.
Yes, sir. Now, growing up, just in younger years, did not necessarily come from what we would call like an affluent background. So, talk a little bit about growing up in a lifestyle of understanding value of money, the value of a dollar, because hey, they weren't coming by a whole ton.
Yeah, I mean, I think our parents always do the best they can, and they did. I grew up in a nice neighborhood. It was really, and it was very interesting, the diversity on the neighborhood as far as socioeconomic
Mm,
situations. And we were sort of at the bottom side, but still on the same block. And just they did what they could to afford. I mean, we weren't getting, I mean, got used clothes and garage sale stuff, and then my mom did a great job of just how to get by and get what we need. But definitely, it was definitely hard,
mm.
growing up and all your friends go to Disney World and go on big vacations, and we couldn't do that. Um, and I didn't like it, to be
Yeah.
I actually used to tease my mom and say that the stork made a mistake and I wasn't supposed to be with a poor family in New Jersey. I was supposed to be with a rich family in Florida, because I like the heat. So it was always something. And, even as a kid, I figured out any which way to make a dollar.
Yeah.
So mowing lawns, shoveling, whatever I could do, lemonade stands, whatever we could do to make a dollar, we would. And that sort of carried through in my life.
Yeah. Now, I think anytime, you have that piece of your story, which is, you felt this need for being able to earn money so you can afford things or so you can maybe have what your friends have, it creates an idea of work ethic. So, talk a little bit about, even at that young age, kind of a development of a work ethic.
Yeah, definitely. That was something I think when I've always put myself that I wanted something, I've always had a level of tenacity to go out and get it.
Mm.
So even when I mowed lawns, I was pretty little and the lawnmower pretty much weighed more than I did and would drag me down the hill and everything. And but I was still very determined to get that because that money was big. I do remember the first time my neighbor let me cut their lawn for a whopping $5. I was all excited and I'm moving the lawnmower across and I hear chink. I'm like, oh, what was that? I hit the oil pipe that was sticking out of the ground. I broke the lawnmower.
Oh, no.
my, so I was like, my dad said it's going to cost $80 to get a new one. I'm like, oh my God, I'm minus 75 in my first business. I'm already in a hole. And they were really good about it. They didn't get mad at me or anything. And, or make me pay for it again. So yeah, I think that really started. And I think, again, the things that drove me were really the things that they wanted. And it wasn't so much the material, it was just I just didn't like the fact that if I
Mm.
wanted something, I couldn't have it. So I
Yeah.
always, and I was an athlete. I was a competitive athlete my whole life, and I think that also helped build my work ethic
Mm.
because I didn't have the talent that mostly everyone else did. So I said, I'll just work harder.
Yeah.
So I spent more hours at the field, more hours practicing, more whatever it was. I just did more, and that helped, I think, build it. Just because I wanted to make the team, and that can go to a side that's not very healthy. So I did
Yep.
develop some unhealthy. So like I was a wrestler in high school and I developed eating disorders. I ran so much to make the soccer team because I could ignore pain that I broke both my tibias.
Mm.
So I could do all these things to my body as a young kid that I spend, the next 20 years healing, So it was,
Yeah.
uh, but it still did create athletics and
Yep.
and the desire to succeed still created a level of work ethic for me that enabled me to do more. And
Yeah.
I think that to me was what was really important is just like, okay, I'm gonna figure out a way to get through this.
That's really good. Now, around the age of 19, you make a promise to yourself that someday you're going to become an author and write a book. So, why was that important to you, or where did that idea and dream come from?
So I always had a very vivid imagination as a child, and so many times my mind was in a different world. I was like Calvin, constantly in a different world when I should have been paying attention in school. So I have all these really visual images, and I couldn't draw. So I found I would write them down. So then I'd go describe them to my friends and the games and the worlds we created in our worlds of make believe, and I could write them down. I'm like, okay, you're gonna say this and do this, blah, blah. So that helped. And then in high school, my teacher, who I dedicated my book to, Mr. Butanek, he really put it in me that I had talent, and
Mm,
really no one ever really encouraged me in most things in life. I mean, I was just a grinder in sports and everything else I did. I was just a grinder, but he told me I had talent and he fostered it. So I
yeah,
believed in myself. But again, it was that I'm right-brained and left-brained. I also love business. I love accounting. I was taking accounting in high school and numbers and anything to do with analysis. With sports, we were always talking about statistics and things like that. And I had this, right brain, left brain battle. And I just thought, so when I was 19, I declared as an accounting major. My sophomore English professor said, Chris, you're really talented. You should change from accounting and pursue your writing. I said, look, grew up poor. I don't want to be a poor, starving artist. I'll go make some money and then I'll write.
yeah.
Well, it
So,
took a while.
yeah, well, so talk a little bit about the power of someone's believing something in you before you even know it for yourself. I think too frequently, right? Um, we're just kind of out there doing something, but it can take that one conversation where it can light a fire or an understanding that, wow, that is something that's possible for me.
It is so important, and I've always believed in that when during, training or when I coached in other sports, is you gotta give the kids the positivity and let them know. It's so important to just plant that seed
Mm,
because, they may not get that reinforcement at home. When I coached, I always made sure that my job was to find the one thing that my boys did well, and I'll harp on that, and if they could only run straight, then that's just, oh my God, you run straight better than anyone here on this team.
mm.
Give them something to believe in themselves, that everybody has a skill and a talent, and everybody has these gifts, which is maybe sometimes they're just not appreciated, brought out.
Yeah. Well, and I think so. One thing that I talk with a lot of folks about is we're all uniquely gifted, right? The things that Chris is great at, maybe Phil is or is not great at. However, oftentimes to become great at something, you maybe had like a leg up to start. Maybe you were naturally a little bit better, but to really become great at something, it takes a lot of the same characteristics, regardless of what it is you've become great at, right? It takes discipline, it takes
Mhm.
coachability, and it takes a ton and a ton of effort. And I think oftentimes what happens is we compliment people based on the end result, right? And they forget that really what we're doing is we're acknowledging you at the end, but we're complimenting the body of work that it took to get to this end result.
Yeah, I'm always was a big believer in complimenting the work ethic, not just the end result,
Yeah.
because so many people, there was even a study about that where the conversations that they had with children it was around math, and
Okay.
they talked about saying to Phil, you worked really hard. I can see how hard you worked on that math problem. You did really great. Not talk
Mm,
about what happened in another group, the control group. They said, wow, look what you did on that problem, Phil. You're really smart.
mm,
And what happened was the kids wanted to be smart, so they
mm,
stopped taking risks. Where the other kids in the other control group, they just said, "Oh, I have to just work hard." So they took
yeah.
more risks. And I think that's a lot too when we're caught in this and how we're defined. So even the compliments that we give, um, you can almost trap somebody because that's what they want to be. Oh, I'm smart, or I'm this, or I'm that. Uh, you know, and I think it's really getting down to the work that they put into it and how hard they go about it. To me, that's always really important. That's the part that needs to be stressed.
That's
Let them
awesome.
struggle. Even my staff, my accounting staff, when they come in, they'd say, "Oh, Chris, I'm having trouble with this bank record, this, that." I'm like, "I know, that's horrible, right? I can't stand it when there's that. Are you gonna tell me the answer?" I'm like, "No, go back. You know
Yeah.
what, you know the answer. The answer is already inside you. You know this. You've done it before. Go back, redo it. Look at your numbers, look at everything that you did." And I think yeah, they'd leave like half frustrated, and then they come back with this big smile when they figured it out. Like, I got it. I'm like, of
Yeah.
course, I knew you could.
Yep.
So
That's
I
really good.
yeah, those are really important moments too.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, as you're, going through school, like you mentioned, you realize, hey, I don't want to be, I don't want to be broke, day one. So I don't know that being an author or going into writing is what I should do. But you do decide that I'm going to take maybe the uncommon path, and I'm going to go ahead and give myself an opportunity to be an entrepreneur, and I'm going to start a business. So talk about being a young person starting a business and all the learning that comes from that.
Yeah, I don't know if well, it was definitely very different. So 1990, this is there were no jobs. We were in recession. And so I really had a hard time finding work. I knew that I wasn't going to do well in a CPA firm. I was hired as the youngest accountant by this environmental firm in they were out of Ohio, but they had offices in Princeton and New Jersey. And I was working for them and going around in the summers. I was working 80 to 100 hours a week,
Mm,
during the summers, and it was 12, 14, 15 hours a day and it was an environmental disaster. So it was a very stressful environment and to work under, but it helped build the confidence. And I knew I just wasn't going to fit in in like a traditional firm. So I went out and I said, I'm going to make my own job.
yeah.
And I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that. And I remember talking to an uncle of mine who like had a big finance job and sold planes to the Japanese. And he said, "You can't start a consulting firm. You're too young." I'm like, "Too
Yeah.
late. I already have a client."
Yeah.
And
Now, or go ahead.
and it just started from there. I had a really good experience. The CPA firm that came into this company, they really like took me underneath their wing and started giving me business. And there was no real freelance type of economy back then. So
Yeah.
I was doing things I didn't realize most people didn't do, but sometimes it's okay to not realize that and just do your own path.
Yeah. Now, I think something that people can struggle with is if their circle is not 100% supportive, even if they feel like it's the right choice, they may not make the decision because an uncle made a comment to them, right? A parent, a spouse, a sibling. And I think at the end of the day, there's a difference between blindly going and doing something and not, hearing at least the concerns to acknowledge, all right, did I think about that? And knowing, hey, I think this is best for me, but listening to someone's opinion just because they're in your circle of influence. So talk a little bit about that for you as you're deciding to start this business and maybe some of the outside influence that didn't necessarily agree with this decision you're
No one did. Uh,
making.
no one did because that's not what you did. You
Yeah.
graduated from college and you got a job and you did that. But I had that with the environmental company. I had a really difficult experience where I went away I- after working summers. I went back and I said, "Look, I have an opportunity to go on exchange to England." And I went on exchange my senior year to Newcastle upon Tyne and changed my life. And when I came back, they're like, "All right, go get your file going. We got work for you." And I found out that somebody who didn't know who I was, because like, why are we keeping this college kid around, fired me. And they owed
Mm,
me a raise and a bonus and things like that. And that was a lot of money for me back then. Uh, and they didn't give it to me because they said, "No, we terminated you." And I was like, "Okay." So they gave me some crappy job, and I was like, "That's it. I'm glad this happened to me at 22 rather than 52." And I said, "I will never work for a company like this again."
yeah.
So, but yeah, no one really believed in it. No, everyone said, "What are you doing?" But I think for me, being middle child and just being like having an attitude problem sometimes. The best way to get me to not to do something is tell me I can't do it.
Yeah.
And so if you like say, well, you can't do that, I'm like, yes, I can, so I'll show you.
Yeah.
And that just gave me the fire. Now it was hard. I was living on ramen noodles. I had to make choices between eating and putting gas in my car. And gas was 99 cents a gallon. It was pretty cheap,
Yeah.
so it was still really, really hard. So I don't want to get your listeners thinking, oh, everything was great after that. No, I was making 12.50 an hour.
Yep.
I still thought like, okay, I'll do this and I'll go and I'll get better and I got more clients and it started to grow and um yeah, but it was really hard.
Yeah.
And I didn't like, just always having to scrim and scrape and um but that just made me work harder.
Yeah. Now, I think with that, a lot of people can get so caught up in how quickly something should happen, right? Oh, I started this business. I should have, 100 clients by 60 days in. And if I don't, then I'm going to get down on myself. And, what I hear you saying is opposed to being so focused on the short term results, focus on what the long term end goal is, right? Hey, I got let go when I was 22. I want to make sure that that never happens to me at 52. So even if in the short term I have to, make lifestyle decisions, I have to work harder than probably what I would if I weren't working for myself. I believe that 30 years from now, Chris is going to thank me. Phil is going to thank me in 30 years for having done this body of work.
Well, yeah, 100%. There was always a long term. And my goal was always around freedom of time,
Mm,
how to create enough financial freedom where I had my time.
yeah.
And so I got involved with a couple of tech companies and I really liked technology. This was in the late 90s. And then I helped raise $2 million for a text to speech company and also help sell uh, their software to Microsoft.
Yeah.
So this was allowing where, I mean, this is kind of normal now, but our goal was to have where if you're in your car and you want to listen to an article, you could use our software and it would read the article to you.
Yep.
99, 2000, this was pretty big technology.
Yeah.
I did really well. I cashed out of that company and then I put it all on a mobile gaming. So this is now 2000 to early 2001. Mobile gaming was really on the rise. And uh, that company was ready to take off. And on August 31st, I raised money just to get us through September. And because we had all these contracts with AOL Mobile, Verizon, Vodafone. We were going to Japan to meet with Docomo. I mean, we had contracts ready to be signed, all worth $250,000, $500,000. And then 11 days later, the universe changes.
Yeah.
And
So talk about that, right? I mean, you just had a massively successful exit of a company, right? I mean, we sell to Microsoft. We're pivoting into the next lane. I think sometimes it's hard for people to, sell a company and then move on to something else, right? You get caught up in what just happened, but you're able to transition into the next thing. And then factors completely outside of your own control impact your business. Talk about, bitterness, frustration, right? All the emotions that go into those moments.
Phil, you hit it on the head. The fact that what ruined our company, because after 9/11, nobody returned our phone calls until November.
Hmm.
And I stretched that $50,000 all the way through December. And we had a great staff and I had great partners, and it was really just a wonderful company that we built, but we couldn't make it.
Hmm.
And we had to close our doors. So January 2nd, 2002. And what beat me up was I didn't make a strategic mistake. I didn't make a financial mistake. A bunch of terrorists flew planes into buildings
Hmm.
and it ruined our company because every new project stopped. Everything stopped. I mean, if you're young and you weren't around then, that's what happened. So startups were bleeding capital and nobody was doing anything new because
Yep.
everyone was very scared.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I lost everything. So now I, thought I was never gonna have to worry about money again. And I figured, well, I did successful in this one. Everything else I've done is worked. Let me do this. And I didn't put any money aside. I put it all on the table again. I didn't save anything. I put it all in and lost it all. So by the end, I was about $60,000 in debt, living at a pretty expensive lifestyle in Park Slope, Brooklyn. And I was crushed. I was crushed emotionally, financially, back at the bottom again. I thought I wouldn't be poor again, and now I'm in the hole.
Yeah.
So it beat me up. It beat up my confidence. It like you think that, well, I did. I'll speak for me. I like thinking, well, maybe I'm cursed. Maybe I'm just destined to fail. And you start believing those messages.
Mm.
And luckily enough, I had a friend call me and one of my buddies, and I'm, just going on and wah, why me? And oh, woe is me. And he said, don't worry about it. You're a survivor. I said, what? You're a survivor. You'll get through it. I'm like, God damn it, you're right. I am a survivor.
Yeah.
And that shook me out of it. And I said, in 90 days, I'm going to get a new contract and I'll restart my consulting company. 90 days.
Yeah.
And
Now,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. You're good. Go ahead.
Then, so I called and met with, had lunch, talked to everyone I knew, emailed everyone I knew to see. And in 89 days, I got a contract.
Now, as I hear you talk about that, once again, I think that is a very normal reaction. Woe is me, right? How bad is life? And we get caught up in our own circle and we lose perspective of things. And a perspective change happened when your friend was brutally honest, right? Like, hey, snap out of it. You're going to be fine, right? But when we're inside of ourselves, we can't think outside of ourselves, right? A friend of mine says it to me this way. He goes, Phil, you can't read the nutrition facts of a Pringles can or a peanut butter jar when you're stuck inside of the Pringles can in the peanut butter jar. It's not until you get outside of it that you can understand everything about it, right? And so talk about the power of having a friend, someone just be brutally honest with you, right? Because the friend could have just been like, woe is you. And yeah, I'm here for you. But they were just honest and they were like, hey, snap out of it, right? Like move forward.
Yeah, it wasn't even a brutal honesty. It was a support. And he's a
Yeah.
real chill guy. He was from San Francisco. He's a musician and programmer. And he just had a very chill way. He's like, just, it was matter of fact.
Mm.
You're a survivor. You're fine. So it was very supportive in that way. And I just needed someone to say, okay, you're going to get through this.
Yeah.
Because having to ask my parents for money for the first time in my life. I paid my way through school. I've never asked them for a nickel. And having to ask them for money, it was humiliating and I hated it. I was always the one who gave them money. I'm
Yeah.
proud of that, that I could help. Even when I was in college, I sent money home. I would send a good portion of my money just because I did well enough where I could help out. And I was proud of that.
Mm.
And I think it was a lot, just what snapped me out of it is realizing I can't, it's not going to get any better unless I
Yeah.
take action.
Yeah.
And what else do I have to lose?
Yeah.
Right? What else do I have to lose? And I think it was just me beating myself up and feeling like a failure to the point of saying, all right, this wasn't a reflection on me. And maybe this is just another challenge.
That's really good.
Yeah. And turning our failures into challenges, I think is something that you can kind of dig into.
Yeah. A friend of mine describes it this way. She says, anytime I hit a challenge, I always just tell myself, this is going to be a really good point in my book, right? And it's so hard when we're living life because the book seemingly ends where we're at right then, right? Because we don't know what the next chapter has. When you're reading a book though, and something really bad happens, you're like, oh, I want to keep reading, right? Because so I know something's going to change, right? Something has
Yeah.
to happen after this. But when you're in your own life, you don't know that the next chapter is written yet, and so you can get caught up in this bad moment. So I love that. That's really good.
Yeah. I've always thought that, well, I'm the author of my own life story,
Yeah.
and I'll just write the chapter how I want it to be.
Yep.
It, for me, I think the big thing was always I wanted everything to happen right away. When you're
Yeah.
in pain, you just want to get out of pain. So I'm very
Yes.
impatient, and not learning that it's taken me a long time to really understand how long things take
Mm.
to just get fixed and to really succeed. And everyone hears about, well, they worked and they sold their company and yeah, 30-year overnight success, right? So
Yep.
there was a
Yes.
lot of work behind that went into that. So that even after that, so even after I recovered and I got that great project and things started to recover, got myself out of debt, made sure I never went into debt again, unless it was for something important. Then I started another company. I got tired of consulting. I had a bad experience in 2007 with a client where I'd helped save the company because there was recession, and I helped came in and saved his company. And then he sort of got resentful with me, the money
Mm.
that he was paying, because a lot of it was he was in fear mode, and a lot of people, this is what happens, and I totally get that because
Yep.
I was too, and you don't know what to do. And so I wasn't in fear mode. I came in, it was a lot of blocking and tackling. Don't spend more than you're earning
Yeah.
and restructuring debt and things like that. So they really weren't very difficult things that I did. But because when you're in fear and no action is being taken, or negative action is being taken. So when he got out of it and when he started making money again, he got resentful. And I'm like, you know what? If people are going to resent me for helping, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm going to
Yeah.
take my knowledge and I'm just going to build my own company. And that's what I teamed up with two friends of mine, and we built Durante Rentals.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about that. So you go to a Rising Stars Award show, and that is where you
Yeah.
meet these folks. So talk a little bit about the serendipitous meeting that ends up leading to a business.
Yeah, that was really interesting. So I won this 40 under 40, this Rising Stars Award, and it was a big deal for me. It was like the first time I've ever won anything, so that was really big. And from that, a group of the winners, we all got together and we realized how much in common we had and how much. So we created our own little kind of group, this mastermind group, where we talked a lot about Think and Grow Rich in that book. If you read it, so we talked a
Yeah.
lot about the principles in that. And I realized one of the guys and we sort of had some similar um, philosophies around business, and we became friends. And I remember the day uh, I was using his law firm to close on my house, my first house that I was buying, uh, and I hadn't seen him around. And I called up his partner. I said, "Hey, where's John? I haven't seen him around." He goes, "Oh, he's doing something else now." I'm like, "Really?" So I call him up. I'm like, "Hey, John, what are you doing?" He goes, "Oh my God, you got to be my CFO." I said, "Okay, what are we doing?" So I agreed to it before I knew what I was getting myself into. And then that was the start. Now, the one thing I will advise your listeners, do not start a company and do a complete top to bottom renovation of a house when you don't know anything about renovating a house. Don't do those at the same time. Don't do that.
Wise words. Wise words. Now, once again, I think you've started multiple companies at this point,
Mhm.
and it's a very true statement, but I think oftentimes we overlook the fact, and that is every time you restart or start a new business, you're starting the business from scratch, but your knowledge isn't starting from scratch, right? Because you've had a ton of experience, you've had a ton of different examples to now grow off of. So instead of starting at home plate and trying to hit the ball, maybe you're starting at first base now because of everything you've learned. It's not just completely from scratch. So talk a little bit about some of the lessons that you had learned in the first couple businesses that helped you, in this next business, and maybe get off the ground a little bit quicker than what you normally would have.
Yeah, well, one of the big things I had to learn was the use of debt because we
Mm,
rented construction equipment.
yeah.
Uh, you know, that it was really learning on the use of debt, where debt in my startups, that was a bad thing. And
Yeah.
my assets went home every night.
Yeah.
They weren't sitting in the yard.
Yep.
So that was an adjustment period to me, that even when we went down to our first trade show, and for us it was a buying show, I was green and nauseous at everyone, because we're like, what are we getting this debt? Until I learned the proper use of leverage.
Yeah.
But everything had a return on it. So then really understanding financial reporting and in other areas. And then there were some disciplines I brought in around spending, around budgeting, and financial modeling, as well as some of the other things. Like, there was a time that a guy came in early and he paid $30,000 for a piece of equipment in cash.
Wow.
And I took the money, and when my partners goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Taking it to the bank." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're taking it to the bank. We're reporting every penny." He goes, "You have no idea how much I hate you right now." Because normally when they got stuff for cash, they just dump
Yeah.
it out. I'm like, "No, I will not have the tax man looking over my shoulder. I refuse to look over my shoulder." And doing things the right way by the book, it saved us. And then when we did get like a tax audit, I was fine. And
Yeah.
like, see, now we don't have to worry. It's gonna be tough. Um, so yeah, I think those lessons and learning, I think really for me, how to communicate to employees, um, to really enjoy training them,
Mm.
and developing them. That to me was a lot of fun. Believe it or not, we won 7 Inc. 5000. We were on the list of Inc. 5000 companies 7 years in a row. We were an
Wow.
Hall of Fame company. We won several other awards. I won CFO of the year 3 times. But the thing that I was most proud of, and I'm really honestly, the thing I was most proud of in that company was building a happy department,
Mm.
and building
Yeah.
a department where people felt empowered. They felt they came to work, they were happy, and because I try to have fun. I try to not make the usual trolls in accounting, we made sure we had a good time and everyone learned, and we had like lunches and learn where I would just go over and break out the whiteboard and like, all right, let's get into some theory here.
Yeah.
And they work so hard. And I think it's really important that you can develop your staff, and I think developing a happy place for people to work is really underrated. And
Hmm.
it doesn't you can work hard and still have a good time.
Yep.
Um, and I was very supportive of my staff, when they needed a day off or this or that. Like, life doesn't happen before 9 o'clock and after 5 o'clock. It happens sometimes. So I was always very like, go ahead, you need to take care of what you need to take care of.
Yep.
And they'll always get their job done.
It's really good. I love it. So, as this business is growing and building, this idea that you had promised yourself once again in your teenage years of, hey, I'm gonna be an author one day. I want to write a book. I know that's a skill of mine. You get this idea for writing a book. So, talk a little bit about the process of writing your book, what your book's about, and where it's at today.
Yeah, thanks. Writing was always so important to me, and I did get back to it after. I would always like write here and there and during the time and being so busy, but then I really got back to it, and I wrote a play about called Twisted Metal, about two Marines and their PTSD. I tend to write about trauma and generational trauma, as well as mental health issues. And my idea for Headcase kind of started around failure.
Mm.
As a competitive athlete, I was and a sports fan, I was always really interested in what happens when an athlete fails, and what process do they go through in this real epic moment when they don't make the shot,
Yeah.
they strike out with bases loaded. What happens? So I thought, well, they go get a sports psychologist to talk to. And then I thought my favorite question as a writer is what if? Well,
Mm.
what if that sports psychologist has far more issues than the patients he treats?
Yeah.
And Dr. Andrew Beck was born. So he's the son of a Masters champion, and he was a golf prodigy, and he didn't want to play golf, but his dad drove him to a breaking point, and he walked away. And now and he walked away from the game right before he turned pro to go study psychology. So he's become the go-to sports psychologist for troubled pro athletes. And there isn't a head he can't fix except his own.
Mm.
And when his own inner demons get the best of him, he misuses his insider information to athletes in a wager, and it leads him down this dark path of blackmail, a mysterious murder, life or death bluffing, and his only way out is to go all in. And the process of writing this, was really, I had the ideas and outlines and been going through it in different ways. And then from we sold the company in June 2019, and I really wanted to now focus on my writing. My last day at the company and after a transition was January 31st, 2020. And so I had February to kind of figure out my new writing life, and then we go into lockdown,
Yeah.
from COVID. And it's like, well, for me, it was perfect. I had all the time to just sit down and write. And so really started working more and more on it, and had some other stories I wanted to write, and I was doing research. And then in July, my lawyer, who's from Barbados originally, and I've been going down there for the last 8 or so years, he told me about this welcome stamp program that they had in Barbados for remote workers. And I said, well, I signed up. I was like number 529 who signed up for the program. And then in September, I packed up my house and hired someone, a property manager, to just look after it. And I left, and I went down to Barbados, where, now I'm writing on a beach. And that background you see behind me isn't a random picture. That's my backyard
Yeah.
in the house that I have down in Barbados. Um, and it was just, but it was still, I think the habits of an entrepreneur and athlete were good in writing for me, where I get up, I meditate every day, get up, do my morning meditation, exercise, and then go write.
Hmm.
And it was motivating for me too, because it didn't fall upon me that, hey, I'm living the writer's dream right now.
Yeah.
I'm writing on a beach, right? How great is this, right? I'm writing in this beautiful country with wonderful people. And I was training in judo down there, which became my sport. And like, I knew life was really good, and it didn't. And I said, no, I really need to work hard. This needs to be a good book. I need to work. And on the days I don't feel like working, and no, you sit down, because there are writers that would give their right arm for this, and you better just. And those are the conversations I had with myself
Yep.
about making sure that I got to work. You
That's
know,
good.
and that was important to me. And I think that helped. Really, and it was a really great experience. It was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard. Um, and because I'm in the right brain, left brain, but I've always been very results oriented. If you haven't figured that out from our conversation, and writing is process oriented.
Yeah.
I can muscle a spreadsheet for 12 hours, no problem. No problem. You can't muscle a manuscript.
Yep.
It's there or it's not. And you got to let it come, and you got to put your mind in a very different frame,
That's good.
than just you. Because I've tried to muscle it, and you read it, your work at the end of the day, you're like, oh my God, that's garbage. That's
Yes.
absolute garbage. And you throw it out and you start again. I mean, I've spent 2 hours on a paragraph,
Yep.
which
No, that's so good.
is very different.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I want to say thanks so much for sharing your story today, and just, the pivotal moments that have led to where you're at. I mean, obviously we've talked a lot about your story. There's still a lot to know, but any additional, pivotal moments that really stand out that, have impacted you to get you where you're at today?
Yeah, I think it's really set your goals, have
Mm,
dreams, dream big, and then chip away at them.
yeah.
Don't expect them in a year or so. It's going to take a while. Find the people who you want to partner with
Mm,
in life, and surround yourself with the people who believe in you. And if that means there's only a small circle, great.
yeah.
Then that's fine too. And really, but set a dream, go after it, be tenacious, don't give up on it, and don't listen to the people who say, you can't do it. And then be smart about it.
Yeah.
Like, the money I put aside, so I didn't need my writing to ever pay a bill.
Yeah. That's
So,
really good.
and I think that's really important. And like, make sure you have a good set of advisors,
Yeah.
financial planner, a good doctor, good lawyer, good accountant. Make sure you have these people in your back, on your team to help you. And even if you're like, well, I don't have any money now, start talking to your financial planner now. So know what's next. I think for your entrepreneur listeners, know what's next.
Yeah.
I had a what's next, because so many people go into this state of depression after they've sold their company because they
Yeah.
didn't know who they are, know who
Yep.
you are. And I knew this is what I wanted to do. I felt like this is the best way that I could be of service, is to just write some really interesting stories around mental health, raising awareness of mental health in sports, generational trauma. I'm passionate about those because we all have it. Every one of us has a generational trauma,
That's really
and
good.
that's something. So make sure you have purpose other than just a bank account.
I love it. Well, Chris, where can people find you? Where can people get your book?
They can get if they go to my website, www.chriskjones.com, if you sign up for the mailing list, you can get the first 7 chapters free. So I figured if you don't like the book after 7 chapters, please don't buy it. So,
Yeah.
but if you do, go buy it. And even my book's on Amazon. You just either look for Head Case, Book 1, Shock and Denial, or you can look under me, Chris K. Jones, and you can pick up the book there. If your listeners have any burning questions, they can email me at headcase@chriskjones.com, or find me on Instagram at headcase_novel, Instagram and Twitter and TikTok on those. And on Facebook, it's Chris K. Jones, author.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thanks again so much. And since I know earlier you said you're motivated by people telling you can't, I'm going to say, I don't think you can write books 3, 4, and 5.
All right, challenge accepted. I'm gonna do it. Thanks, Phil. I appreciate the time. It was really great to talk to you.